All right, folks, welcome back for the commercial break. I am so excited to have this next guest on. Every time he comes on, we get a dose of healthy news, a dose of healthy common sense, something that's often missing in the great city of Washington, D.C. Joining us right now from the great state of Georgia, Congressman Austin Scott. Congressman, great to have you back on the show, sir.
Hey, John, thanks for having us.
We love having you on. I want to start with something that obviously a lot of the country is focused on right now, the debt ceiling negotiations. The Republicans have a concrete plan. They got ahead of the White House. They got ahead of the Senate. Now Joe Biden is kind of slowly engaging on negotiations as the debt day of reckoning comes near. Tell us where we are and what you think will ultimately happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, keep this in mind. We were at the statutory debt limit the day Joe Biden signed the omnibus bill. So if they were going to increase spending in December, they should have included the debt limit increase in there to cover the cost of that spending. So that is one thing that the mainstream media won't tell you, is that we were actually at the debt limit the day Biden signed the omnibus bill in December of last year. Now, obviously, you have the ability to do extraordinary measures, which are things that you don't want to do. But the fact that Janet Yellen, wasn't screaming at the time that the omnibus bill was signed that the debt limit needed to be included in it is concerning to me, because I think that, it shows how political the institution that she represents is becoming. This same institution is the one that was saying, oh, inflation is transitory, as they were pushing to pass the Inflation Reduction Act and the American Rescue Plan, both of which spent $3 trillion. I want to say it again, $3 trillion they spent without a single Republican vote. And the end result of what they've done is they have taken the national debt from $27.7 trillion the day Joe Biden was sworn into office to over $31.4 trillion today. And so, John, the spending and the debt increases that have occurred in the last 26, 27, 28 months are not sustainable. And so we as Republicans have said we recognize that there has got to be some increase in spending, but we've got to change the trajectory of spending. And so in order to have Republican support for the debt limit increase of $1.5 trillion, we're going to ask the Democrats to agree to spending reductions so that we can actually get the government back to a size that the American citizens and taxpayers that are out there working every day can afford.
Yeah. And you've done a good job of tracking the size of the debt under Joe Biden. It's just jaw-dropping how much debt we've piled on in 2 years. It's more than most presidents put on in 8 years. Do you think Democrats have any recognition how everyday Americans look at that? I mean, if our credit card was that tapped out, we wouldn't be spending the way the government is. Do you think it's starting to sink in that maybe they have a liability with voters?
No, I don't think so. Not on the debt limit. I think that they think that the more money they spend, the better they're making people's lives, and they want the government to have more control over our lives, whether it be our food supply or our housing, and they think that that this culture of dependency is a good thing, because they think that more government is better government. And so, John, I can't explain it. I don't want my kids dependent on any government, including my own. And yet they seem to want to create a system where more and more Americans are just totally dependent on the American government for, everything they have from the cradle to the grave. And it simply will not work. But it's a dangerous mindset that they have. I will tell you what I do think is catching up with them, John. If you watch, a little bit of the news today, I got to see a little bit of the news, but there's some Americans that are pretty ticked off right now about being kicked out of their homes or current housing situation to make way for illegal immigrants when those American citizens don't have anywhere to go. And so I do think
that is sinking in, isn't it?
I do think that is finally past the breaking point with the general public. When you see veterans being kicked out of their the place where they're spending the night to make way for illegal immigrants, you see other Americans being kicked out of the place they were going to spend the night so that they can make way for illegal immigrants. Where do these American citizens go when you're moving them out of their homes and their residences to make way for somebody who's in the country illegally? And the bottom line is, it's having a tremendous impact on the homeless population inside the United States. And I think that is the one where Democrats, their constituency, is getting pretty fed up with their border policy.
Yeah. Yep. And when you start booting legitimate American citizens from their legitimate housing so that someone else can illegitimately take it, it does seem to hit home, doesn't it? It does seem to really sink into people just how absurd the world has become under Joe Biden and liberal policies. I wanted to turn to another subject we've known for a long time because of the great work you've done. And of course, you have visibility through House Intelligence, other committees you've been on. John Durham put out a very fact-driven report, and it really accentuates what we've kind of known since slowly from 2017 forward, that the FBI had no basis to investigate Donald Trump, but it sustained a 3-year investigation nonetheless, that Hillary Clinton was the primary feeder of the bad information to the FBI, and that they didn't treat her the same way. When allegations came in about her, she didn't get opened up on an investigation the way Donald Trump did. So dual justice, unwarranted investigation, and politicalization of the FBI. You've been a cogent voice about fixing the FBI. What was your take on the Durham report yesterday?
I mean, my take on the report is that he just told American citizens what those of us who had been paying attention already knew, and that there was no justification for it. If you look at how, if you couple that with, the way the Intel Committee was abused in the past with the whole Russia hoax, and the way, the former chair of Intel, Adam Schiff, would do things behind closed doors and then walk out and immediately speak to the press and talk in misleading ways to give the press the ability to run stories against President Trump. I mean, it's an abuse of the system. And if you want to know for a fact that the Durham report is accurate and true, then all you have to do is turn on some of the left-wing news sources out there and hear them squawking about how bad it is. I mean, the fact of the matter is he hit a nerve with them because he told the truth, and he exposed them for, their abuses of Donald Trump, and if you like President Trump or not. And look, I mean, I don't think he breathes fire. I don't think he walks on water. The United States government is not supposed to hunt a U.S. citizen the way the FBI was used to, carry out investigations against him, and candidly, the way Congress and the Intel Committee carried out investigations that were just a waste of taxpayers' time and money.
Yeah, that it was.
It was a hoax.
It was. And those who tried to call it out back at the time, Jim Jordan, Devin Nunes, Mark Meadows, you and others, you were all disparaged, but you were on the right side of the facts always. Is there some punishment that Congress should mete out to those who peddled a false story, knowing it was false? You were all in the same briefings. Republicans and Democrats heard the same briefings. Only the Democrats came out and said there was evidence of collusion. Now, John Durham has said there never was. Should there be a penalty, a censure, something that allows Congress to express its displeasure with those who misled the institution, and also for people who had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal bills? Any thought about, coming up with a restitution fund for people who defended themselves against what basically were manufactured allegations?
We have not talked about a restitution fund. What I can tell you, John, is that nobody should be untouchable. And people who abuse their positions of authority should bear the consequences of that abuse. And whether it be the loss of job, or whether it be potentially going to jail, or whether it be a civil liability, there have got to be consequences for those that abuse their positions of authority. It is, this is a democracy. It's not a kingdom. We have a constitution. And American citizens, we recognize that we have to have certain government entities to keep us safe, but when the people who are in charge of those entities abuse their authority, they need to be held accountable. And nobody at the FBI has been held accountable for the things that they did, and that is, one of our concerns as people who are trying to govern in today's day and time is how do you correct the actions of an agency if there is no punishment for those who abuse the authority that they have by virtue of working at that agency? So I don't think that the leadership at the FBI recognizes how much their credibility has dropped with those of us in Congress right now. John, I think we will continue to tell them, but I will also tell you that you're not going to stop the abuses if there are not consequences for the abuses levied to those who carry them out. And even one of the people that was fired as soon as Biden became president, he was hired back.
Yeah, that's right. Andy McCabe, right? He basically got his pension restored, even though the IG had determined that he gave false testimony to official proceedings on multiple occasions, as I recall. So really remarkable.
Of course, if you do it against a Republican,
that's right,
then not a whole lot is said about it. But if you do it against, if you did it against a Democrat, I feel sure there would have been consequences. And that's that double standard that has created the huge lack of trust in the American government.
Yeah, that's so true. So very true. There is multiple reports out on Just the News on my site here about whistleblowers. One, an IRS whistleblower who informed Congress yesterday that he's been retaliated against. He and his entire team taken off the Hunter Biden case after raising concerns of political interference in the case. That, by the way, the letter says the DOJ removed him. So the very agency entrusted with enforcing whistleblower laws is accused of, in this case, retaliating. And then today, just a short while ago, we obtained a letter that came from an FBI intelligence analyst to the Justice Department Inspector General. This is an active, ongoing investigation. It's been going on since April, actually. We've confirmed that it's active and considered a serious matter. He alleges that he was retaliated against, his security clearance taken, he sidelined, his paycheck taken, after he raised concerns about the accuracy of a statement that Director Christopher Wray gave to a Senate proceeding. Again, a protected disclosure. I wanted to get your thoughts. I know you believe in whistleblowing and that when they are telling the truth, they must be protected. Tell us a little bit about the climate. All these allegations now, whistleblowers not only coming forward, but some of them now saying they're being retaliated against just because they wanted to highlight something that could be fixed in government.
Yeah, no, it's unacceptable. We need people inside the agencies to tell us, in many cases, the secrets of the agencies if we're going to pass legislation that's going to correct some of the wrongs of the past. And if we're able to prove that these statements, or if they are able to prove that these statements are correct, again, if a whistleblower accurately states that somebody in testifying to Congress, certainly if they're extremely high ranking, misrepresented the facts, then the whistleblower should be protected, and the person who misrepresented things to Congress is the one that actually should, bear the consequences of the false statement. Now, I'll tell you, without the whistleblowers, John, I don't know how we would know. In some cases, if that statement was false. I don't know exactly what statement he's talking about here. I'll have to look it up.
Sure.
But how would we know it was false if there wasn't a whistleblower? And so again, I mean, the people are very frustrated with those of us in Congress. But it's hard to govern when you don't know the truth because people inside the agencies aren't telling you the truth. And so I'm on the side of the whistleblowers. I mean, they're doing their patriotic duty to make sure that we have the facts, and the facts are what we have to govern on.
Yeah, such a sage way of looking at it. I wish everyone looked at the whistleblowers the way you and Senator Grassley and Congressman Comer and actually Ron Wyden and a couple others and the Democratic side also take them seriously, but so few actually value them the way that they should be valued. My good friend, Miranda Devine, one of the most accomplished journalists, and of course was right on the Hunter Biden laptop from the beginning, but got canceled. She wrote a really fascinating column in the last 24 hours saying Mike Morrell can't clean up his dirty letter that was meant to secure Biden's 2020 win. And of course, it just resurrects everything we now know about the letter of the 51. I know you've had a lot of time to reflect on it. There are things you know that you probably can't talk about in connection with the Intelligence Committee, but just in a general sense, how concerning is it that 51 former intelligence experts who all carried the banner of the United States government and the approval of the United States government, their titles, they derive from the U.S. government, the taxpayers, wrote that letter and clearly impacted the outcome of the 2020 election.
Yes. So let's look at it even, maybe a little broader picture in that you've got Donald Trump and Joe Biden are running against each other, and what ended up being probably the highest vote total ever in the history of the United States in an extremely close election. Donald Trump got more votes running for re-elect than he did in his original campaign because of his policies, and yet somehow Joe Biden ended up with enough votes to become sworn in as president of the United States. And so let's look at what the intelligence community did to Donald Trump from start to finish. You look at what they did with what was provided by the Clinton campaign, the Steele dossier. You look at what they did to him while he was in office with the Russia hoax and the use of the House Democrats in the Intel Committee. Then you look at going into re-elect, how the intelligence community, again, which is not supposed to be engaged in the political campaigns inside the United States of America, engaged clearly to cover up the Hunter Biden laptop story. And I will tell you, John, these are not 1% or 2% things in an election. If the Hunter Biden laptop story had been published, I do not think that Joe Biden would be the president of the United States today. I just don't. And so, we wouldn't have, $31.4 trillion in debt today. The consequences of what they have done have been detrimental to our country.
Yeah, that's such a great point. It really did change the course of history. I'm sure there's a lot we're learning about the Biden family deals. Maybe there are some things from a classified setting you can't talk about yesterday. But the notion that Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley first raised, that James Comer now, I think, very eloquently raises, is this family has the appearance, at least, of being compromised. That when they make decisions about China, Ukraine, Russia, anywhere they got money from, they may have been compromised. And one of the questions I have is the intelligence community is a very smart community. It tries to protect American citizens whenever they can, particularly prominent people in the crossfires. Do you have any doubts or concerns or thoughts about the intelligence committee maybe giving a defensive briefing to the Bidens at some point? It would seem to me some of the stuff going on overseas, it might have raised a red flag or two for very smart people. Is there anything to learn for the intelligence committee about how they did or didn't address the Biden controversies in real time when they were occurring from 1413 to 2020?
Well, I don't know how to answer that. I will tell you this. If you just again, I don't think Donald Trump walks on water, and I don't think he breathes fire. But if you go back and you look at everything that somebody in the intelligence community or an intelligence agency did to him, both before he was elected and after he was elected and into his campaign, and at how they either originated from Democrats like Hillary Clinton and her campaign, or they protected Democrats like Hunter Biden and therefore Joe Biden, it's very clear that the bias from that community is towards the far left Democratic Party. And yet they're supposed to be totally apolitical. They're not supposed to be engaging in political activity. And yet they have played a role a very significant role in the last two presidential elections.
Yep. Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, the evidence is prima facie now. It's not even in doubt. Last question, because I love following your Twitter feed. I always learn things from it. And I think more than anyone else, you have continually focused on one of the great security vulnerabilities of the border. There are many of them, and we know them all, but the idea that terrorists and foreign adversaries are probably plowing across the border right now because there are just so many places. We had Border Patrol agents on yesterday who said right now 70% of the border is unprotected compared to normal staffing, and soon it'll be down to 10% protection, 90% open. You, I know, have eloquently said this many times on my show, but it feels like something really tragic may have already crossed the border, just waiting to happen. How concerned are you based on the state of the border security for our future safety here?
Well, I'm very concerned, and there are people that wake up every morning trying to figure out the best way they can to hurt those of us who are Americans, either physically or financially. And I don't understand why we would want to allow somebody from China, for example, to get a 14-day travel visa into Mexico, and then if we catch them at the border, turn around and release them into the United States of America 2 or 3 days later. And yet that's exactly what's happening. I will tell you, John, I think Americans are fed up with this border. I don't think it matters if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I think when you look at what's happening down there, it's not right. We're being taken advantage of. When you're looking at TV and you see where American citizens are being told you can't stay here tonight because we have to move you out to make room for somebody who's illegally in the country. I think they've crossed the line with this. And let's remember this. All Joe Biden had to do was to continue the policies that were in place when he came into office. And instead he relented to the far left. And now you've got a crisis at the border that is creating a crisis inside every state and city in the United States.
Yeah, that's so true. And you're right. Americans are so perceptive. I think there's a group of elites in the media and politics who think, the Americans are never going to catch what's going on there. If we just tell them it's closed, they're going to believe it. They're just so much smarter than that. In fact, it's insulting to think that some people treat the American public that way. But they really do know that Joe Biden changed the security at the border, and they're kind of tired of it, aren't they? I think you hit it on the head with that.
They do. And they're smart enough to know that if you gave everybody who was illegally in the country a green card, that it would be, blue-collar Americans, they would lose their jobs.
Yeah, that's it. They are. They know the consequences of the long-term consequences of this insecure border. Congressman, we are so honored to have you on. Every time we come on, we always have a great discussion. Our audience loves you because we get straight talk. We get a lot of insights that we don't get anywhere else. I want to thank you. I know how busy you are today, but I want to thank you for giving us so much time.
Hey, thank you, John.
Thank you, sir.